Good afternoon, one and all present here. My name is Mohit Kishore Vats, Assistant Professor at DME Media School, and I welcome you all to this two-day symposium on the Union Budget 2021-2022. We have amongst us Professor Dr. Ambrish Saxena, the Dean of DME Media School, and it was basically his idea to conduct this two-day symposium on the Union Budget, wherein today, that is day one, I, Mohit Kishore Vats, along with Professor Dr. Ambrish Saxena, would like you to understand the basics of the budget. And in the second day, that is tomorrow, we are going to have an eminent guest who has been part of many shows, and he has been hosting programs and explaining to the people regarding the basics of the union budget. So tomorrow we would be having Dr. Sharad Kohli with us. He is a man who has been associated with many startups, and he would be explaining you a bit, I would say, more about budget because he's an expert. And mind you, before I actually begin with this program, we are just a little inquisitive about this budget, and we feel that our students, be it media students or be it management students, they should understand that what is there in this budget through which they can actually understand and how can they decipher this budget. So along with Professor Dr. Ambrish Saxena, we also have the head of department of DME Media School, Professor Dr. Susmita Bala. I welcome you both to the session, and I request Professor Dr. Susmita Bala to kindly give her opening remarks. Ma'am, please.
Thank you, Mohit. Today's symposium for decoding the Union Budget 21-22. Dear students, today's session has been organized to give you a basic understanding of the budget that was presented in Parliament on 1st February. For understanding this budget, you need to know the economic system of the country. Mohit sir will help you in that. He will also tell you the salient feature of the budget. Then Dr. Saxena will take up more intricate issues. So enjoy the session and learn the things that will benefit you in many ways. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mohit.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your opening remarks. And before I actually begin with the presentation on the union budget, I am again reiterating the fact that I and Dr. Saxena, we are not experts, but we are just some inquisitive people who would like to understand the budget. And we would be having the expert in the day two, that is tomorrow. But whatever we know, we will try to answer your queries, and we will try to make you understand that what is there in this budget and how can we understand it. So let me begin with my presentation and explain it to you that what are the basic features of the budget and how is it made. Let me share my screen. So as you can see on the screen that this is the Union Budget 2021-2022, and this is of utmost importance because this budget is coming in the time when our economy is going through a pandemic. We all know that many people have lost their jobs, and we have the introduction of the COVID vaccine. The vaccine drive has already begun from 16th of January. That's why this budget is of utmost importance. And in this cover slide, you can see that the Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman is giving her signal regarding this budget. That's what we can decipher from this picture. Along with her, we have the Minister of State for Finance, Mr. Anurag Thakur, and the other officials which are related to the budget making procedure. We have Mr. Ajay Bhushan Pandey also in this picture, who's the Economic Secretary. And we also have Mr. K.V. Subramaniam, who's the Chief Economic Advisor. So without wasting much time, let's begin with this presentation. Now, first of all, we should understand what's the process of presentation of the union budget. Now, students, as per the procedure, there is a joint session of the parliament, which is generally held at the beginning of the year. And this is the longest session of the parliament, which is known as the budget session. So in this session, the parliament that includes the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, they discuss on the grants which have been given in the budget, and they deliberate that whether it can be passed or not. Since we are a democracy, we need to understand and we need to discuss what are the grants that have been given to certain ministries. So when this joint session of parliament actually begins, it's the President of India who actually addresses the joint session of parliament. And after that, the Union Finance Minister, that is Nirmala Sitharaman, she actually begins with her budget speech, first in the Lok Sabha and then in the Rajya Sabha. So, but before actually the budget is presented in the parliament, it's the economic survey which is presented. So this year also on 29th of January, when the joint session of the parliament took place and the budget session started, on 29th of January, the economic survey, or in Hindi what we call as Arthik Sarvekshan, that was presented. So economic survey is a document wherein the chief economic advisor, he tells to the people of India, or he communicates that what have we achieved in the previous financial year, how was the state of the economy, and what are the things that the budget can probably take cue from the economic survey. So after the presentation of economic survey, it was on 1st February, as Professor Dr. Susmita Bala just mentioned, that on 1st of February, the union budget was presented. Now moving on, first of all, as I told you that it's the economic survey which is presented, and here on your screen you can see the Chief Economic Advisor of India, Mr. Krishnamurthy Subramanian. He is the Chief Economic Advisor, and he actually prepared the economic survey. And for your own understanding, I had just displayed you the cover page of the economic survey. Mind you, economic survey is divided into 2 volumes, and this is the first volume wherein you can see that it is talking about balancing risk and opportunities. So in risk, you can see that there is economy, there are health issues, there are livelihood issues, and in opportunities, we have IT reforms, we have infrastructure and things like that. So the second volume of the economic survey will be presented later, but this is a document which actually tells us that what's the state of the Indian economy. Now moving on, let's first understand what is an economic survey. Now the Economic Survey of India, it is a document that is brought out a day ahead of the general budget, and it is the flagship annual report of the Finance Ministry. Now the survey, what is a survey? It is a detailed report of the country's economic performance during the past 1 year. So talking about the past 1 year, that is the financial year 2020, April 2020 to March 2021. Then it is basically an assessment of the progress of the economy over the 12-month period. Now you would be asking me, I just said that it is still March 2021. So it is not covering March, it is covering January to December. So it basically assesses what progress we have done in various sectors of our economy, be it health, be it education, be it infrastructure, be it taxation, be it basic indexes. So these are the things that are covered in the economic survey. Now, it's a usual practice that the Union Budget and the Economic Survey of India are presented a day apart. Now, the budget session begins with the joint session of Parliament, where the President addresses to the joint session of Parliament, and he talks about the type of initiatives which his government has taken. And then after that, this economic survey is actually presented. Now, the economic survey is divided into 2 volumes, and apart from an overall snapshot of the economy, the survey also provides an indication of what is coming. What is coming means what can you expect from the budget. Then an economic survey, if I go into a little detail, it is a snapshot of the major economic developments that have taken place in the last 1 year and gives a glimpse of what is coming ahead in the short to medium term, what the government can do and what kind of money circulation, or not circulation, but what kind of money allocation can be done by the government. It essentially lays the groundwork for the presentation of the budget. Now, the survey is prepared by the team, which is headed by the Chief Economic Advisor. He is in the Ministry of Finance, Mr. Krishnamurthy Subramanian, who was appointed the Chief Economic Advisor in December 2018. Before Mr. Krishnamurthy Subramanian, it was Mr. Arvind Subramanian. They both are not related. Obviously, their surname may be common, but they are not related. Mr. Arvind Subramanian was the previous Chief Economic Advisor, and now it is Krishnamurthy Subramanian. Now let's talk about what were the highlights of the economic survey. Now, the highlights of the economic survey, the first point says it was the advice to the government, keep up the spending. Now, as we know that our economy is going through a tumultuous phase, and we have experienced 2 quarters of GDP going into negative figures. The first quarter was April 2020 to June 2020. It was around minus 23.9. Our economy slid because we all know that we were going through this pandemic and it was a lockdown situation. And the second quarter, that was from July till September, again, the economic activities picked up. We were unlocking our economy, but still our GDP was minus 7.9%. And the other figures, that is the third quarter, it is yet to be released. So it advises the government that the government should spend a lot. Then economy to go past pre-COVID levels in 2 years. This is very, very significant that at least we need to wait for 2 more years so that our economy will come to that pre-COVID level, that is 2019-20, when we achieved around 4.2% GDP growth rate. The third point is higher growth will check debt in check. If our economy will grow, then the kind of loans we are having or the kind of debt we are having, our government is having, that will, or our private sector will be having, that will come down, and that can be checked if we grow at a good level. The fourth point is Indian banking needs an asset quality review. Now we have students both from media and management, and you all understand what do you mean by an asset. So the Indian banking sector, let me just give you a brief. The Indian banking sector has been going through a difficult phase, and we have been experiencing the problem of non-performing assets, NPAs. So that's why it says that the Indian banking needs an asset quality review 2.0. It needs to assess and it needs to decide what are its assets and how it can be managed. Then we should eye on core inflation for policy making. Now, other than the lockdown situation, the slump in economic activities, and the unemployment situation, another important thing which we have been witnessing as part of our Indian economy in the past 1 year or so is been the inflation. That is Mehengai. So inflation is continuously increasing, and the government and the RBI, the Reserve Bank of India, is trying to contain this inflation. So we should keep a check on core inflation. And students, it is the RBI which has to actually balance this situation of keeping the inflation in 4% to 6% bracket. So it could either hover around 4% or it can go +2 or -2. Then it's pointing to a problem of over-regulation, the kind of regulation which is done by the government. So it is actually giving an advice to the government that the regulation part of many industries, that should be reduced to a level. Then a regulator for healthcare. Healthcare is absolutely important. We all have realized that how it is important, why it is important. So there has to be a regulator for healthcare. And mind you, if we can improve our healthcare system, then probably our growth will generally be better as compared to the previous year. Then another interesting fact which it points out is why Bangladesh is beating India at exports. So talking about Bangladesh and India, Bangladesh is a country with which India shares around 4,000 kilometers of international boundary. And Bangladesh is quite famous for producing jute products. And India also has these states like Assam, West Bengal, Odisha, these states, Jharkhand and Bihar, they also specialize in jute. But Bangladesh is somewhat is ahead of India. So why Bangladesh is beating India at exports, it tries to ponder upon that. Then India can't just rely on jugaad. So you all are aware that this terminology is very Indian, and we focus that whatever we have, we can manage and we can somehow go ahead with that. So we just can't rely on jugaad. We need to have certain important things with us. Let me give you another example. In the previous economic survey, that is of 2019-20, there was a concept of thalinomics. That is one thali, which we generally get in a restaurant. So that concept was discussed. So these are certain interesting facts which the economic survey puts out, and we discuss upon that. And finally, the economic survey is in support of the farm laws. It says if the farm laws are passed by the central government, which is actually passed, and if they are implemented, because right now they are on hold as per the order of the Supreme Court, but if they are implemented in our country, the economic survey points out that it would be beneficial for the country in the longer run. Now, moving on, here is an interesting piece which I have taken from the Times of India. You can see that we are a very cricket crazy nation, and we are really addicted to these activities going on. So we have just witnessed the Boda Gavaskar Trophy, in which our youngsters, or I would say our Team B of Team India, they performed exceptionally well and they won that series. So here is an example from the economic advisor that wait for Monday, you will see both Pujara and Pant in action. So the economic survey was presented on Friday and the union budget was presented on Monday. So that's why it says that you will wait for the budget and you will see both Pujara, who bats with lot of patience, diligently, and you will see Pant also, who is a swashbuckling player. So he says that 37 lakhs saved from infection, and he talks about 11% GDP growth. That's a significant number that we are going to grow around 11%. Then it says that the farm sector, it needs a cushion, and all states have improved on basic necessities index. Now, this is very, very important. The basic necessities index is a chapter which has been included in the economic survey, and it talks about the activities like water, sanitation, health, etc. So Mr. K.V. Subramanian says that, like in cricket, even in economy, timing matters. And talking about timing, you all remember Rahul Dravid and his timing. So when the ball is swinging a lot, there is a lot of uncertainty. You need to play carefully. That is bat like Pujara. And when the swing is gone, you bat like Pant. Wait for Monday, you will see both Pujara and Pant in action. So he's actually giving you a signal that probably you will expect, you will get a good budget. Now moving on, let's just give you a snapshot of the Indian economy. Here is a snapshot of the Indian economy, which I have taken from the Press Information Bureau. You can see that at the first, this bar diagram, this is a GDP growth rate of India at constant prices. So 2017-18, it was 7%, 18-19, 6.1, 19-20, 4.2, and 2021, this financial year, which is going to end by 31st March, we may go into negative figures of minus 7.7. This is an estimate figure. Again, 2021-22, since the vaccination drive is already on, the economic activities are slowly and steadily picking up. So we are expecting, this is an estimate, that we may grow by 11%. Coming to the second column, that is fiscal deficit, absolutely important, because fiscal deficit is the kind of borrowings which the government takes. Ideally, to understand fiscal deficit, it is the difference between what government gets in form of revenue and what government spends in terms of expenditure. But to meet this difference, the government has to borrow from the market. So that's why in the year 2003, there was an act passed by the parliament that is known as FRBM Act, that is Fiscal Responsibilities and Budget Management Act. So it talks about that we need to keep our GDP, our fiscal deficit percent of GDP into 3.5%. So it gives you provisional actual numbers that in 2017-18, it was 3.5. And slowly and gradually it is increasing. And talking about this financial year, it is estimated that, and even the coming financial year, it may go to not minus, but it may go to 9.5%. So it would be a huge fiscal deficit, and we can understand that how government revenue has been affected by COVID. The third, this bar diagram talks about inflation. So it has two types of inflation. One is WPI, that is wholesale price index. And the second one is consumer price index, that is the CPI. Coming to the fourth column, that is current account balance. So current account balance has increased. So it talks about the kind of revenue India is getting. Finally, we come to the next column, that is foreign exchange reserve, which has increased a lot. Then talking about the sectors of economy, you have multiple times heard the term primary sector, secondary sector, tertiary sector contributing to the Indian economy. So here the first, this bar diagram talks about the primary sector, that is agriculture, forestry and fishing, which is directly related to nature. So you can see the growth, and mind you, this is a very significant number, because in the first quarter of this financial year, that is 2020 and 2021, the agriculture was the only sector which grew and which gave us hope. The second one is industrial growth, which is right now in negative figures, you can see. In the year 2021 because of this lockdown situation. And talking about the service sector, it is also in the negative figures. Now moving on, here is another bar diagram for you to understand the GDP growth, because this actually explains that the kind of production and services which are taking place in our economy. So you can see that gradually from 2017-18, we have moved to 2021-22, and it is expected that we will grow by 11%. Given the kind of situation we are in, we will generally grow by 11%. Now, moving on, let's just give you a brief of the chapters of economic survey, because the economic survey has certain chapters and it talks about the kind of situation we are in. So it talks about, the first chapter talks about the name of the lesson is saving lives and livelihoods amidst a once in a century crisis. So the first chapter of the economic survey talks about COVID-19 and how our corona warriors, or I would say the frontline workers, have worked diligently and have tried to save lives. Then the second chapter talks about, does growth lead to debt sustainability? It says yes, but not vice versa. So if you are going to grow as an economy in different sectors, your debt sustainability, or the kind of debt you have, the kind of loans you have, that will gradually come down and you will be able to sustain that. So if you does that growth lead to debt sustainability? Yes, but not vice versa. The third point is, does India's sovereign credit rating reflect its fundamentals? It says no. The chief economic advisor says that there are many these international rating agencies which rate countries' economy on the basis of various factors. So you must have heard the terms like, or the name of these credit rating agencies like Fitch, like Standard and Poor's, like IMF. So, but IMF is not as such a credit rating agency. It's the S&P and Fitch which generally rate a particular country's economy. So India has been kept into the triple B category. So it says that India's credit rating reflects its fundamentals. It says no. India is performing really well in the past 2 years, but it is not reflected in the International Sovereign Credit Rating Agency, independent country agency ratings. Now the fourth chapter is about inequality and growth. So we have inequality also, and we have growth also. We have growth in the service sector also, and but we see inequality in terms of distribution of income. So there is a conflict and there is a convergence. So it talks about that. Then healthcare takes center stage finally. Now, this has been discussed over decades that India needs to spend a lot of amount, or at least 3 to 5% of its GDP on health. Because if we improve our healthcare sector, then it will generally be really helpful, and the kind of expenditure we are doing on our healthcare, that will reduce, and it will help the economy and the families to probably spend that money into some other thing. Moving on to the other chapters of economic survey, it says regulatory forbearance and emergency medicine, not staple diet. So regulatory, you want to regulate a sector, you should do that, but it's not a staple diet, it's an emergency medicine. And staple diet, which you generally take in your day, that could be someone is fond of wheat, someone is fond of rice. So that depends on the kind of person or the kind of place we are living in. Then the seventh chapter, the other chapter talks about innovation. So it says that trending up but needs thrust. Innovation needs thrust, especially from the private sector. Then the other chapter talks about Jai Ho. Jai Ho is not a film by Salman Khan. Here it talks about Ayushman Bharat's Jan Arogya Yojana. So this Jan Arogya Yojana is a kind of a yojana, is a kind of a policy wherein, or a kind of a program wherein the common man can get affordable medicines. So it talks about Ayushman Bharat's Jan Arogya Yojana and health outcomes. And finally, a very important part of economic survey, the last lesson, it talks about the bare necessities index. The bare necessities index, in the sense, if we divide our states on the basis of health, on the basis of water, on the basis of sanitation, on the basis of these basic things, where do they stand? So a basic bare necessities index has been developed in this survey, and it is being developed with the help of the Niti Aayog as well. So you all must be knowing that Niti Aayog is National Institution for Transforming India, and it's a kind of a policy think tank which assists the central government and the finance ministry in formulating these plans. So the budget begins by this economic survey, And now we are coming to the budget. That is let's first understand what's the definition of the annual financial statement. It's technically called as annual financial statement as per the Constitution of India. And we call it in general parlance as budget. So Article 112 of the Constitution requires the government to present to Parliament a statement of estimated receipts and expenditure in respect of every financial year, that is beginning from 1st of April and it concludes by 31st of March. So this is a kind of definition which is there. So it talks about what kind of estimated receipts we may get in the coming financial year and what kind of expenditure we have to do in the coming financial year. So this statement is called the annual financial statement, and it has these numbers, these huge numbers called budget estimate and revised estimate. Another interesting thing which I'd like to add in this lecture is that the budget preparation begins with a halwa ceremony. There is a halwa ceremony which takes place at the Finance Ministry office, and then the budget preparation begins. So that's a kind of a traditional activity or it has been going on, and after that the budget starts, the budget preparation begins. Although the consultations they begin quite early, it takes around 6 months because different ministries and different departments they consult with the finance ministry, and then finally the budget is presented. So this halwa ceremony you must have heard and you must have saw in the news. So that's why I'm just mentioning it here. Now moving to the this budget. So this is the digital version of the union budget. This is the first budget which is presented digitally, and you can see the Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman walking out of the Finance Ministry with a pad which was developed in India. And we all know that we are going through this pandemic, hence it was decided that this time the budget will not be printed and it will be available through an application and it will be available online. You can download it, and the finance minister presented it through this tab. Now what are the things that the budget talks about? So as per the government, there are these 6 pillars of the union budget. The first is health and well-being. That's obviously important considering this pandemic. The second is physical and financial capital, and most important, infrastructure. Because if you develop infrastructure in the long run, you may expect that the economy is going to generate jobs. The third pillar is inclusive development for aspirational India. So inclusive development means that you are going to include each and every sector of the economy. You are going to include each and every strata of society. You aspire for that. Then reinvigorating human capital. You need to work on your human capital. Here I would like to add that you must have heard of the term demographic dividend. So India has a large percent of population which is young, and they may contribute to the economy. So that's why we need to keep them educated, keep them aware, and we need to generate those kind of jobs for them. Then innovation and research and development. We need to innovate, we need to find out better ways to deal with problems, and we need to constantly do research and development in different fields. And finally, this has been the motto of this government. They time and again focus on this, that we talk about minimum government and maximum governance. So the cabinet would be little, or the government, the number of ministers would be less, and there would be less regulation, and there would be more focus on governance, so that things are delivered to the people on time. Now, talking about these budget, these 6 pillars, first I would like to talk about health and sanitation. So there is a new scheme which has been introduced in this budget that talks about PM Atmanirbhar Swasthya Bharat Yojana. It will be developed it will be launched, and it will be developed for primary, secondary, and tertiary healthcare. And it will actually boost up our health system. Then we have another program called Mission Poshan 2.0. So Mission Poshan talks about the problem of malnutrition. We all know that in our country, there are many children who are malnourished, who are stunted, and because of that, our young population is affected. So Mission Poshan 2.0 is to improve nutritional outcomes across 112 aspirational districts. Now, the third one, which is again a very big program of this government, it is named as Jal Jeevan Mission. So students, just to give you a brief about Jal Jeevan Mission, the government had created a ministry called Jal Shakti Mantralaya, and it has set a target that by the year 2024, that is in the coming, that is from 2019 to 2024, 5 years, they are going to provide drinking water to all the households. So Jal Jeevan Mission Urban aimed at better water supply nationwide. Moving on to the second pillar of this budget, that is education. Education again is very important, and here it says that it is going to open up 100 new Sainik schools. So Sainik schools, it's going to focus on that. Then they are also going to open up 750 Eklavya school. They will be these schools will be set up in tribal areas. Eklavya schools are kind of boarding schools specifically for tribal children. And then finally, we all are aware that that there was a new union territory created, and that is Ladakh. So Ladakh, there would be a central university coming up in Ladakh, and there has been demands of people living in Ladakh that education is one thing which has to be prioritized there. So the government has given a proposal of setting up a central university in Ladakh. Moving on to the third pillar and an important figure of union budget, that is infrastructure. Now, here is an important aspect here. The first point says vehicle scrapping policy to phase out old and unfit vehicles. So we all are aware that we are going through this pandemic also, and we are the air quality index of our country is also not good. So that's why to improve the overall transport system and to phase out old vehicles, this vehicle scrapping policy has been introduced so that all vehicles have to undergo fitness tests in automated fitness centers every 20 years for personal vehicles and every 15 years for commercial vehicles. So government is thinking that if we can phase out these old vehicles, then probably the level of pollution can be reduced, and probably we can also have new vehicles coming and people can purchase those vehicles, because India has already advanced to Bharat stage 6 fuel compliant vehicles. So that's another point which the government is thinking about, and this was actually discussed and deliberated long ago, and finally the government has come up in this budget. Then the second thing, highway and road works announced in Kerala, Tamil Nadu, West Bengal, and Assam. So these are the 4 states where we would be having elections also this year. So these 4 states are also going to have these highways, which will be covered under the National Highways Authority of India. Then since railways is also an important aspect, and mind you, just to add here, till 2016, the union budget and the railway budget was presented separately. But in the year 2017, it was decided that the railway budget and the union budget will be merged together. And from 2017, we have been witnessing that the railway budget has been merged with the union budget, and it's the finance minister who actually presents both the things together. So talking about railways, the government has made a proposal that it's going to electrify the railway network, complete railway network by 2023. Other than that, the government has also given a proposal of opening of more metro trains in other cities of India. And it's also going to focus on the second phase of metro trains in other parts of India. We have the Delhi Metro Rail Corporation, we have Noida Metro, we have Jaipur Metro, we have Amma Metro, we also have metro in Tamil Nadu, in Kerala. So the government is planning to increase that network. Now, other than that, the final point in infrastructure talks about Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana. That's a LPG scheme, distribution of LPG cylinders in the name of women of a below poverty line household. So it says the Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana LPG scheme to be extended to cover 1 crore more beneficiaries. Just to give you a bit about this Yojana, this Yojana was launched by the government in 2016, and they had a target of 5 crore. Then they extended it to 8 crore, and now they have set another target. So they feel that by extending this Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana, this problem of these health-related problems, they can be controlled, and by naming the cylinder in the name of the women of a family, they may focus more on that. Then moving on to the other pillar of this union budget, that is tax. So it says no IT filing, income tax return filing for people above 75 years who get pension and earn interest from deposits. These deposits are generally deposits which are there as FDs. So the TDS, that is tax deducted at source, that's going to be deducted, but they need not to file the income tax return. Then agriculture infrastructure, this is very important. Agriculture infrastructure and development cess. This has been proposed on certain items, including urea, which is again used in agriculture, apples, crude soybean, sunflower oil, crude palm oil, Kabuli chana, and peas. And mind you, just to give you a brief about what is a cess, cess is a kind of tax on tax, and it is specifically collected for a specific purpose. So here it is agriculture, infrastructure, and development cess. So this cess will be collected by the central government, and they will be only using it. They will not be sharing it because cess is integrated goods and services tax, so it is shared. But if we talk about cess, that is collected by the central government, and the central government may use it. Moving on, now we come to economy and finance. So the government has made a proposal to increase the FDI limit of insurance from 49% to 74%. So insurance, we have two types of insurance. We have life insurance and we have these general insurance, wherein we buy insurance for our cars and we buy insurance for our own health. So the government has come up with a proposal to increase the FDI limit from 49 to 74%. And we'll have to wait and see that what kind of investment can we expect in the coming financial year. Moving on, this is again important. 2 PSU bank and 1 general insurance firm to be disinvested this year. Now, talking about disinvestment means that you are going to sell some part of your share out of a company which you are owning. And privatization means where you are selling at least 51% of your ownership. So since government has been deliberating and discussing and dealing with this problem of non-performing assets of public sector undertaking banks, that's the government banks. That's why it has, in the previous years, it has merged many banks, and now it has actually not given us a name, but they are going to disinvest 2 PSU bank and 1 general insurance firm. Then an IPO, that is an initial public offer of LIC Life Insurance Corporation to debut this fiscal. Although this was announced in the previous budget as well, but we all know that because of the pandemic, there were certain problems. So that's why this has been again reiterated in this corporation limited. IDBI Bank, that is Industrial and Development Bank of India. Air India to be completed. Government has been trying for a lot of, I think it's been more than 2-3 years that the government is trying to sell the Air India, but unfortunately there are no buyers in the market. So the government has again set this agenda. Just to give you a brief of whatever was the target in the previous financial year. In the previous financial year, the government had set a target of 2.1 lakh crore as part of disinvestment, that it will be sharing its part, but it collected only 15,000 crores. So there was a huge difference in that. Similarly, government is again thinking that it may sell some of its shares from BPCL and IDBI Bank, and it will generate some money out of it so that it can invest, or not invest, but so that it can invest in, or I would say spend for the public benefit. Then another important point is an asset reconstruction company will be set up to take over stressed loans. So in talking about Indian economy, it is the banks only generally who offer loans to these corporate houses or to construction companies. But we see that they have been running into huge losses and they are not able to return those loans, and they turn eventually into NPAs. So an asset reconstruction company will be set up, that is also technically known as a development finance institution, popularly known as DFI. And it is actually related to a bad bank. A bad bank is a kind of a concept wherein the bad bank will purchase these NPAs from other banks, and then it will try to recover that amount. So there is an asset reconstruction company which will be set up to tackle with these stressed loan situation. And again, this proposal, the last proposal which is mentioned on this slide, that talks about deposit insurance. So whatever we have deposited in our bank accounts earlier, as per the last change which was done, the insurance was 1 lakh. It was, I think, done in 1993. And in the previous budget, it was announced that it will be increased to 5 lakh, because we have witnessed many banks running into losses and the RBI taking it over. So we have various examples. So considering that situation, this is one point which has been included in this year's budget. Then agriculture. So agriculture infrastructure fund to be made available for APMCs. Now these APMCs are Agriculture Produce Marketing Committee. These are in common parlance known as Mandi system. So agriculture infrastructure fund to be available to these APMCs for augmenting their infrastructure, so that the farmer and the seller, they can have a better infrastructure and they can sell their produce at a better level. Then 1,000 more mandis to be integrated into the eNAM marketplace. Now this eNAM is Electronic National Agriculture Market, which was proposed in the year 2016-17, and the government has set a target that it will again integrate 1,000 more mandis into that, so that the physical thing is not there and the farmer can actually sell his produce or her produce through these eNAM markets. Moving on to employment. Now, very, very important. We have witnessed in the past that there has been massive unemployment and there was pressure on the government that they need to do something. They need to spend on infrastructure. They need to spend so that employment may be generated. So let's look at this factor. So it says a portal to be launched to maintain information on gig workers and construction workers, and social security to be extended to gig and these platform workers. And finally, marginal capital required for loans via Stand Up India scheme. This was another scheme which was launched before this budget. It has been reduced from 25% to 15% for scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, and women. Now, let me give you that what is the breakup of receipts and expenditure of the Government of India. Now, first of all, if you can see on this pie chart, this is a rupee comes from. So rupee comes from pensions. Rupee comes from states' share of taxes and duties, that is 16%. Finance, commission and other transfers, that is 10%. Subsidies which we give, that is 9%. Defense, 8% or 8 paisa rather. Then interest payments, whatever loans the government takes, it has to pay that interest also 20 paisa. Central sector schemes which are announced by the government, 13 paisa. And centrally sponsored scheme, these are 9 paisa. So this is the whole breakup of rupee comes from. And rupee goes to, we have borrowings and other liabilities. We borrow them, we need to pay that money, so that 36 paisa goes to borrowings and other liabilities. I would just like to give you an example of the Delhi Metro Rail Corporation. It has actually taken loan from Japan International Cooperation Agency, that is JICA. And during this pandemic, we all know that on 22nd of March, the Delhi Metro was closed down and it opened eventually in the month of September. It had to incur huge losses and it had to overhaul its infrastructure. So it requested the Japan International Cooperation Agency to actually give it some time to deposit the loan, or I would say the interest amount. Then 13 paisa goes to corporation tax, corporate tax, income tax 14%, customs 3 paise, then union excise duty, goods and services tax 15%, non-tax revenue, and non-debt capital receipts. So this is the whole bunch of, or I would say breakup of receipts and expenditure of the Government of India. And finally, because many students and many people ask कि भाई हमें ये बता दो इस बजट में क्या महंगा हुआ और क्या सस्ता हुआ. So for your everyone's benefit, I have included these things. So electronic items are going to get expensive: mobile phones, chargers, synthetic gemstones, imported leather items, solar inverters. You can see that list is long. And similarly, moving to what's going to get cheaper. So gold and silver, that's the last resort which we go to. Iron and steel, nylon cloths, copper items, insurance, shoes, dry cleaning, and agricultural equipment. So finally, if you want to read more about budget, I have tried to include each and every important part of budget. If you still want to read more about budget, you can refer to these articles and these references, these news websites. And finally, I would like to conclude my presentation through a quote by Rabindranath Tagore. It says, "Faith is the bird that feels the light and sinks when the dawn is still dark. I think it's quite relevant to the times we are in, and we expect that the time to come would be better for us. So with these words, I conclude my presentation and I open the house for questions. But before that, since budget is a thing which has been discussed in many news channels, in many, many other platforms also. And the share market is also a very important thing, because after the presentation of the union budget, the share market has gone actually up. So to make you understand in a short, in a brief, I have requested Mr. Pramod Kumar Pandey, who is an assistant professor at DME Media School, to kindly explain us that what are the implications of this budget on the share market, and he has kindly consented to explain to us that what is the impact, because I think he knows a bit about share market, and he can explain through his knowledge that what is the impact of this budget on the share market. So I request Mr. Pramod Kumar Pandey, Assistant Professor, DME Media School, to kindly address the gathering regarding the impact of this budget on the share market, and also explain it to us that what are these two indexes which we hear in the news, like Sensex and like Nifty 50. Pramod sir, can you please elaborate?
Thank you very much, Mohit sir. First of all, it's very difficult to talk about market when we have Amrish Saxena sir with us, who's been hosting Market Mantra for such a long time. And I think the first lesson on Indian economic issues and reforms, I mean, I have taken his class, and there was a time when I was teaching this subject. So there are so many things that I'm going to say which will reflect, or which will be a replica of what exactly he said, at that point of time. But in addition to that, I mean, I cannot get into a lot of depth. I mean, Amrish Saxena sir would be a better person for that. But since I've been trying to follow share market, and I've been, in touch with a few people who have been following share market for a long time. I mean, there is just one thing that I would want to tell, that whether you talk about Nifty, whether you talk about Sensex, you talk about Bombay Stock Exchange or National Stock Exchange, I think one important thing or underlying factor is the market sentiment. So, I mean, it has come as a surprise, like while there are so many people who are talking about uh, there being a lot of expectations from this budget, but this budget not exactly delivering, or there being some sort of, manipulation of the data, or, hyperbolic, figures and everything. But, the market has really taken it in a very positive way. I mean, I was just reading somewhere that, after 1996, this has been the first time that the market has responded positively in such a way that there was an upsurge by 5%. And, I mean, almost 500 points, Nifty went up by 500 points, and Sensex was like more than by 2000, when, before the budget, when I believe the sentiments were not in favor of the budget, we saw the market, falling, for 5 or 6 continuous days, and those were not, small, dips in the market. Those are major corrections that happened in the market. I mean, uh, as what I read from the various reports that talked about, why Sensex surged high or Nifty surged high, it says. Probably the market. I mean, it's not all the people, but probably the people who have invested, which is primarily about the institutional investors, because they are the ones who really have the potential to, take markets up and bring markets down. So I think, they have been, really motivated by the fact that there have been announcements regarding the healthcare. There have been announcements regarding the auto sector, the insurance sector, and also the agriculture to a great extent. So, if I can just tell you in brief about the relationship between, the public sentiments and the way market reacts. Um, there was an IPO that was introduced, and people, made record bids for Indian IRFC. There was a IPO that was introduced on 19th or 18th of January, and it was supposed to be, somewhere in between the range of 26 or 27 rupees, and it was one of its kind, in the field of railways and railways insurance and railways finance. And the kind of response that that IPO received was very overwhelming, and everyone believed that there are chances that it may behave something like how the Burger King IPO behaved. It started from somewhere near 30, 40 or 50, ended up 150 or 160 in 2-3 days. So that was the kind of expectation. But just look at the sentiments, look at the kind of expectations people had from the budget. I mean, there were negative sentiments, and we really did not see that IPO, despite getting that kind of response from the people. It is still, trailing somewhere below from where it started. So, this is the kind of relationship that public sentiments have with the markets. So I believe the market has really taken it very positively, and especially the ones, institutional investors who are sitting in America, who are sitting in other countries, who the big corporates who are funding in our in our economies, the money that we are getting through FIIs. I think that is something that they have really taken it positively. I was just reading that Stanley Morgan, they have immediately upgraded the target that they had set for Sensex, and initially they were believing it to be somewhere near 50,000. Now they have immediately said the next target should be 55,000. So they believe that the Sensex can move up by 5,000 points very soon. So that is also an indication of how international agencies have been rating this budget and the Indian markets now. So this will definitely have an impact on the retail investors, like so many people who have their demat accounts, who are investing small amounts, their savings into the share market. And because the agencies have given a thumbs up to the budget and to the Indian economy now, I think this rally is going to go on for some time. And I think even today we saw that the market moved up, and that too by huge margins. So this was something that has really come as a relief for a lot of people, especially after that entire week where we witnessed a correction of about 2,000 points in Nifty and around more than that in Sensex. So
Pramod sir, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting. I would request if you can talk a little bit about Sensex and Nifty and the kind of companies and how these indexes affect us for the benefit of all the students who have just joined this session.
Okay, so like we have Sensex and we have Nifty. I mean, Sensex is an index that comprises of the data of 30 companies, and when we talk about Nifty, it's Nifty 50. So it comprises of companies of various sectors and 50 companies of various sectors. So it's an index that has been very well thought of, and overall the performance of Nifty and Sensex, it gives an idea of how the market is overall behaving. Though it can be said that even if there may be a fall in Nifty, or there may be a fall in Sensex, a deep fall in Sensex, does not necessarily mean that all the shares are going down. So it is primarily sector based, and the sector that is represented more either in Sensex or in Nifty, if you witness a fall or rise in that particular sector, then we witness a fall or increase in that particular index. So if we talk about Nifty, that is believed to be a more balanced one, comprising of or having a better representation of the various sectors. Like we have various sectors, like we have healthcare, we have sectors like auto, we have sectors like agrochemical, we have sectors like insurance, we have banking. And for banking, we have Bank Nifty. That's a different kind of an index that gives you an idea of the performance of the banks. And then you have apart from that, you have different kind of bifurcation, like you have small caps, you have mid caps, and then you have large caps. So these are the different kind of bifurcations within the market. But if we look at it overall, it comprises of various sectors. And when you talk about Nifty or Sensex, it comprises of only a very handful stocks that are giving you an idea of the entire market. So, that is the relationship. So if there is one sector that is performing well, there are times when the other sector is not performing well. And these are all cyclic process. If there is an external market, external stimulus, then you would witness a sudden of, increase or, change in the price. It would either increase or it would either fall. So because of the external stimulus, like, we witnessed heavy, market fall when this lockdown happened, and when globally when coronavirus was unfolding, we witnessed heavy fall. But then that was a time when international market realized that it is a time for bottom fishing. The markets were down. The Nifty came down to something like 8,000 something, and now we have Nifty that is somewhere close to 15,000. So that is when uh, there was a lot of investment from the FIIs from outside. And also there is another thing that I would like to just mention, that was a time period when a lot of people, when they were at home, when they were enjoying the lockdown initially during the initial period, there have been record number of demat accounts created at that point of time. So, that is the reason why there has been a difference in the reality, the way the economy has been behaving at the grassroots level, and the way it has been reflected from the performance of the share market. So there is always this gap because of that.
Pramod sir, sorry, I'm again interrupting. I have a question. Look, whenever the share market surges up, people say that the economy is doing well, and whenever the share market goes down, people say the economy is doing bad. So, what are your views on this? Is share market reflective of the Indian economy?
Not like 100%, because an economy is influenced by so many factors. It's not just the share market. I mean, if you really look at share market, I mean, who are the people who are investing there? Like I said, retail investors, small retail investors do not have the power to move the markets the way it has been moving recently. It is primarily because of the big investors, especially who are, outside, like we call them institutional investors within India and outside India. So basically they are the ones. So they look at the potential, because there is just one fundamental of share market, that is to, buy low and sell high. And because they have that might, they increase the volume of the entire trading, and they have the potential to change the price and change the way market is behaving. So I believe to an extent it is reflective. I mean, if in the budget, if there is something that is suggested for a particular sector, it is going to bring some positive response, and people also then start trusting that sector and specific stocks in that case. But it cannot be the true reflection of everything about what's happening in the economy.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
It was very difficult, sir. If I made some mistake, kindly excuse me.
No, I think thank you so much for explaining these things into such minute details, and I hope the students must have gained something out of this session. Now, without further delay, I would now invite the Dean of DME Media School, Professor Dr. Ambrish Saxena, for a question answer session. I would also request him to share his view on this budget. Sir, please.
Thank you, Mohit. Thank you, Pramod, for taking such an enlightening session. And I believe that all the highlights, all the important points of this budget 2021-2022, you have covered. I believe that there are some questions that would be better for me to take instead of again talking about. I mean, there are so many things which can be talked about on the budget, and it can go on and on. But I don't want to burden the students that way, wherein we keep on speaking and they keep on listening. So it would be better if they ask pertinent questions, and while answering the questions, I can touch upon all such aspects of the budget which are necessary to understand.
Thank you, sir. I would request the students to kindly post their questions in the chat box, and please put your name as well. So to just start this session, I would request, sir, can you please tell us what is the impact of this agricultural and infrastructure cess which has been imposed on petrol and diesel? Because we heard that the finance secretary is saying that this 2.5 rupees cess which has been imposed on petrol and 4 rupees on diesel will not impact the common man. So can you please elaborate on this?
See, there are many confusing things in this budget. I do not know what the policymakers, budget makers have there in mind, what the government wants to achieve. With regard to petroleum, diesel and petrol, in the retail market, we must understand that the pricing that is there in India is the highest if we compare to most of the countries in the world. So this is difficult to understand why this kind of situation is there. And the component of the real price of a liter of petrol is diesel is much, much less. I cannot tell you exactly in terms of rupees, but I mean, roughly you can understand if in 100 rupees, 40% is a real price and 60 rupees are the taxes. And taxes of all kinds, central taxes, state taxes, the local level taxes, all kinds of taxes are there, which means the central government, the state government, the local government, everybody is trying to extract money by selling petrol and diesel in the retail market. In essence, this is completely an anti-people approach. Because if you are asking the people to pay more and more on purchasing petrol and diesel, and particularly diesel, diesel is the commodity which is used by the farmers the most for their agriculture purposes. So on one hand, the government says that they are concerned for the farmers. On one hand, the government is imposing this agriculture infrastructure cess, and on the other hand, they are hitting a commodity which is used the most by the farmers. Now, another point, what the government has done in the case of petroleum, they have reduced the duty, the excise duty. And there are two types of excise duties, if I can tell you, on petroleum. One is this basic excise duty, BED. Another is a special additional excise duty, SAED. Now, these duties are being reduced. When these duties are being reduced, the price is supposed to come down. But at the same time, the cess is being imposed, so the prices will remain more or less at the same level. So to this extent, the government is correct that it is not going to hit the common man, I mean, those who are purchasing the petrol and diesel. But what does it mean? This means the revenue collection for the government also will not hit. The common man will not hit. Thus, the collection, revenue collection on this for the central government will not get a hit. But the state governments will get a hit. Now, mind it, on the sale of petrol and diesel, both are getting benefited, the central government, the state government. Now, with the imposition of cess and with the reduction of this excise duty, the government has made sure that its central government will make sure that its revenue does not fall. But the revenue collection of the state government will drop. This is a bad thing in a federal structure wherein such kind of policies are being pursued, wherein you are trying to weaken the states and cutting off their revenue sources. What does it mean again? This means states will be more and more dependent on the central government for getting money to run their business and to take up the development projects. So this will result in the concentration of political power through concentration of the financial powers.
Thank you, sir. So we have now number of questions coming in the chat box. There is a similar kind of question which has been asked by Ayushi Verma and Karthik Ahuja. They want to ask what is there in this budget for the middle class?
There is hardly anything for the middle class. The government has played very safe. And as I was talking during the day with Mohit, then this is all jugglery of data. So the data has been placed in such a manner that the budget appears very rosy. It is genuinely appearing as a dream budget. But as you go deep into the budget, then you will realize what all game has been played. Data is very rosy, no doubt. But then, and one important thing which the government is claiming, that there is no tax. Obviously, there is no tax, but there is a hidden thing which has been done. What is it hidden? I mean, I think many of you may not be knowing what is cess. Cess is tax on tax, right? And this is a backdoor revenue collection. In economics, no, I mean, most of the economists do not think good about cess, because you are befooling the people. You are saying that the tax is either there is no tax, we are not increasing the tax, or tax is in the lower regime. But in fact, you are imposing tax on tax and you are making money. I give you one very interesting example, because the most of the students are there in this session. They may not be knowing about this because they are not filing their income tax returns. What happens in the income tax? There are different slabs which are there, and whichever slab you fall and whatever rebates you get, finally you calculate the tax which is supposed to be deposited with the government. Now what happens when final tax collection tax estimation is made? Then on that figure you are paying 4% cess, which is an existing thing, which is there for years. And what kind of cess is there? There is an educational cess, there is an health cess, all these, I mean, so already in the name of education, already in the name of health, the government has been extracting money from honest taxpayers for years. Now, what the government has done, the government has reduced this duty and that duty on so many products besides petroleum. The government has done the same thing with regard to gold and silver, right? But cess is being imposed. This means the revenue of the government will not fall, and the revenue of the central government is bound to increase, and state governments will suffer because of that. So you must understand the cess, CESS. Every student must Google and find out how much cess has been imposed in which commodities. Different percentage of cess has been imposed on different commodities and goods. Then you will realize that the government has made its own arrangement for revenue collection, and on the face of it, it appears that no tax has been imposed.
Thank you, sir. There is another question coming up from Divya Prakash. He's asking that the government has announced many disinvestment targets in this financial year as well. So what is your view on the disinvestment targets of the government? And he says that people are saying that the government has sold many of its assets. So is this good or is it bad, or was it needed?
I can tell you in very simple terms, right? Suppose you have 10 houses, you own 10 houses, right? And you earn, and besides your houses, you are doing a business or you are doing a job, and you are getting a salary of 5 lakh rupees a month. I mean, that's your earning, besides your permanent assets, the houses. Now, what happens? You suffer losses, and your income comes down from 5 lakhs to 4 lakhs, but your expenditure is 5 lakhs only. So expenditure remains the same, your income comes down. What will you do? You will sell one house to compensate that. So when you are selling one house and it is sold in 20 lakhs, 30 lakhs, these are hypothetical figures, then that amount comes to your pocket. फिर 6 महीने 1 साल आपका आराम से चला. Again, there is a mismatch between your income and expenditure. What will you do? You sell another house. उससे जो पैसा आया फिर आपने साल 2 साल काम चलाया, फिर उसके बाद अगेन आपके जो इनकम और एक्सपेंडिचर है उसके बीच में मिसमैच है. देन यू सोल्ड अनदर हाउस. एक दिन ऐसा आएगा 10 मकान बिक जाएंगे, लेकिन आपका जो इनकम और एक्सपेंडिचर का गैप है वो नहीं ठीक हो रहा. फिर आप क्या करेंगे? फिर आप क्या बेचेंगे? So disinvestment a deceptive thing. Disinvestment is nothing else but you are selling the assets of the country. These are the assets of the country. And any country has to have the assets. And what are the assets? ONGC is an asset to this country. Indian Oil is an asset to this country. These public sector undertakings, जिनको हम पहले, I mean, नवरत्ना या महारत्ना बाद में कहते थे, ये हमारी pride है, ये हमारी financial stability के लिए है देश में. And what we are doing? Either we are selling or we are disinvesting. Disinvesting means you are selling a certain stakes to private players. So you are giving more and more shares, more and more stakes to private players and reducing the shares of the government. This either, I mean, according to me, this is not a fair thing done, or even if, I mean, the economy is at such a juncture that you need to do it, then at least there has to be very cautious approach on this. What happened? I mean, 2 years back, the ONGC was compelled to buy HPCL. And ONGC said that we do not have that much money to buy a new company. Then the ONGC was pressurized to borrow from the market and buy HPCL. अब क्या हुआ? ONGC ने 37,000 crore मार्केट से उठाया, उधार लिया, उधार लेके HPCL को खरीद लिया. तो आपने एक लॉस मेकिंग कंपनी एक प्रॉफिट मेकिंग कंपनी के माथे बढ़ दी, और वो जो प्रॉफिट मेकिंग कंपनी थी उसको उधार उठाना पड़ा, जो वो चुकता करेगा, वापस करेगा. What will happen eventually? ONGC will also turn into a loss making company. So I don't understand this kind of economics. Disinvestment is a faulty thing, and there are so many intricate things. This whole concept of disinvestment was brought by Atal Bihari Vajpayee Sarkar in 99, and Arun Shourie became the first disinvestment minister. But when in 2005 UPA 1 came to power, they abolished this disinvestment policy. Again, the UPA 2 brought back the disinvestment policy. This government is also following the disinvestment policy. Now, there is one more thing to this. The government plans the disinvestment, but what will you whatever efforts are done by the government for disinvestment, there are no takers. There are no takers. The government is ready to disinvestment this company, and like you take the example of Air India.
Yeah.
There are no takers for Air India. Where, I mean, there are no takers in the sense, I mean, nobody is ready to buy the entire company. Nobody is even ready to buy some shares in the company. Last year also the government put this in agenda कि Air India को disinvest करना है. इस बार फिर उसको लेके आए disinvestment करना. Now what the government is doing? Last year भी LIC के ऊपर निगाह थी. इस बार भी LIC के ऊपर निगाह है. LIC is the greatest asset in this country, but गवर्नमेंट को जहां पैसा दिखाई देता है वहां पहुंच जाते हैं कि उसके भी आईपीओ लाके मार्केट से पैसा उठा लेंगे. बट इंटरेस्टिंगली स्टॉक मार्केट में जो भी आप राइज एंड फॉल देख रहे हैं, ये सारा मिसलीडिंग है. इनफैक्ट जब से आई मीन फॉर द लास्ट मेनी इयर्स आईपीओज आर वेरी लिटिल इन द मार्केट. आप आईपीओ का नंबर गिन लीजिए साल भर में कितना आता है. आईपीओ का नंबर बहुत कम है. बेसिकली जो भी ट्रेडिंग हो रही है वो सेकेंडरी मार्केट में ट्रेडिंग हो रही है, प्राइमरी मार्केट में. तो इसका मतलब people are not ready to buy the IPOs. They deal only with those shares जहां पे उनको लगता है कि यहाँ प्रॉफिट है तो वो खरीदते हैं और बेचते हैं और सेकेंडरी मार्केट में मुनाफा कमाते हैं. तो डिसइन्वेस्टमेंट तो बहुत ही एज ए पॉलिसी आई डोंट सपोर्ट. एंड अदरवाइज ऑल्सो डिसइन्वेस्टमेंट गवर्नमेंट कितना भी कोशिश कर ले, मेरे पास फिगर्स नहीं है बट दिस कैन बी चेक. डिसइन्वेस्टमेंट टारगेट फॉर द लास्ट मेनी ईयर्स since the time this NDA government has come to power, they have not been able to achieve their disinvestment targets. They are failing every year. इस बार भी उन्होंने जितना टारगेट किया, I don't believe they are ready, they will be able to achieve those disinvestment targets. और अगर disinvestment के targets achieve नहीं हुए तो क्या होगा? The government will not be having enough money which they plan to use in infrastructure development. And अगर उसके बाद भी गवर्नमेंट अपने डेवलपमेंट के प्लान पे आगे जाएगी तो क्या करेगी? देन इट विल हैव टू बोरो फ्रॉम द मार्केट से पैसा उठाएगी. अगेन देयर विल बी ए प्रॉब्लम ऑफ द फिस्कल डेफिसिट. तो अभी जो फिस्कल डेफिसिट की तुमने शायद बात नहीं की मोहित, फिस्कल डेफिसिट इज अगेन ए वेरी सीरियस प्रॉब्लम. गवर्नमेंट हैज मेड ए टॉल क्लेम्स कि वो इस बार की नेक विद इन ए ईयर कि अभी शायद 10 पॉइंट समथिंग इन्होंने प्रोजेक्ट किया है.
जी जी 9.5% प्रोजेक्ट किया है सर.
9.5% किया है, which is very high, which is very very high. But then government का plea ये है कि this is a corona year, so the economy is badly hit, so we are at this figure, and the government is also claiming we are transparent. हमारे पास जो फिगर है वही हम बता रहे हैं. But the government is also claiming in the budget that we will reduce the fiscal deficit within a year from 9.5 to 6.8. लेकिन ये 6.8 अचीवेबल टारगेट नहीं है. अगर डिसइन्वेस्टमेंट का टारगेट पूरा नहीं हुआ, अगर रेवेन्यू में शॉर्टफॉल हुआ, तो ये फिस्कल डेफिसिट 6.8 नहीं होगा. अगर अभी 9.5 है, मे बी शायद 8.5 आ जाए, 8 आ जाए, 6.8 आई फील विल नॉट बी पॉसिबल. थैंक यू.
Ji, thank you, sir. Sir, there is another question I would like to ask that is in the chat box. That is regarding the development of Development Finance Institution. What is a DFI? And if you can also relate it to a bad bank for the benefit of our students.
See, NPA, I mean, this is related to NPA in a way. NPA is a serious problem in the country. This is non-performing assets. And every bank suffers from this. And if banks are suffering, we all suffer from this. And what the government does, the government is in fact trying to infuse money in the banks because nobody has a solution to bad loans. Nobody has a solution to NPAs. And even the government does not have a solution. So what the government is doing, the government is trying to infuse more money, more liquidity in the banks. Now, all this money is in fact the taxpayers' money, which is being given to the banks to restructure, to either, to put more money or to restructure the loans and I mean, whatever such. So the government now is trying to institutionalize this, to make such kind of framework wherein the problem of NPAs can be solved by continuously monitoring and by looking at this as to how these bad loans can be tackled.
Thank you, sir. We have been just joined by the Director of Delhi Metropolitan Education, Professor Dr. Ravikant Swamy. Sir, I welcome you to this special session called Decoding the Union Budget 2021-2022. We have been taking questions from students regarding this budget, and I would now like to invite you to share your views on the budget and what are the features of the budget through which we can gain something. Please, sir.
I believe this budget was a very routine kind of budget. And first of all, I would like to tell the audience that, you know, budget is never a policy decision. Budget is simply a lekha jokha of whatever has been like its expenses on one side, revenues on other side. But in our country, we have an expectation from a budget as if there is going to be a policy change and more so like a paradigm shift. This is how we perceive the budget. So that is the beginning point, that budget should not be perceived in that way. It's not a policy statement. As far as other things are concerned, I believe means there's nothing new in this budget. And in the present times when the revenues are at a very low level, because if you see the Indian economy, like 15% of the GDP is contributed by the agriculture sector, which obviously is not affected by COVID, not at all. Yeah. Another 55% is the services sector, yes, which is not that badly affected. But then the remaining is manufacturing, from where the revenues are at an abysmal level. So that way, this budget is almost like a repairing kind of job. And as sir was talking about disinvestment, Yes, disinvestment is now almost a tool in the hands of the government, and it is using it here and there, wherever, and it has become a trend that if a person is not doing well, if an organization is not doing well, you merge it with an organization which is doing well. So this is a very dangerous trend, as Sir has rightly told. But at the same time, there are other things where disinvestment is the only way out. Say, for example, the organizations like HMT, and these organizations are no more relevant now. Like the government manufacturing tractors is something which is very irrelevant in today's times. It was very relevant when the nation became independent. But sir, the tragedy of disinvestment is that no one is willing to buy products which are not good. So the tragedy is that you can sell only the good things. So yes, it's like selling the family gold. It's like selling the family silver, as Sir has rightly put it. This investment should be done in a judicious manner, which is not done, because poor things no one is willing to buy, good things everyone is willing to buy. And then we have tragedies of disinvestment, like the Balco case, wherein the organization was Bharat Aluminium was sold to Sterlite at a price which was so low that the very next day, or say after a few months, once the disinvestment was done, once Sterlite was the owner, the company became a highly valuable company, and when it was owned by the government, it was a company having a low value. So this is a very typical phenomena which happens. There are so many examples of disinvestment where the government faltered. Probably the example of Centure Hotel Mumbai. The hotel was sold at a price which was very low, and soon after it was valued at a very high price. So all such problems are definitely there, as Sir has rightly pointed out. That's all from my side. I will be adding subsequently.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Sir, although there are a lot of questions, there is a question on employment. So a student named Gauri Sharma asked, what is there in the employment sector and what are the kind of steps government has taken to boost employment?
मोहित, एक बहुत important बात है जो गवर्नमेंट का the whole emphasis on infrastructure development is this only, because I was doing a program on the budget on All India Radio on AIR FM Gold, and incidentally I had the chance to interview there the chief economic advisor, Mr. Subramanian, who has in fact made this entire budget, and Mr. Pandey, who is the finance secretary. Who is the key person? These are the two key persons in the making of this budget. So I had an opportunity to talk to both of them. So in fact, the government's main emphasis is on infrastructure. Why infrastructure? Because once the infrastructure develops, there will be more job opportunities, right? As the government has claimed कि पिछले एक साल में कोरोना में सब कुछ नुकसान हुआ, लेकिन रेलवे का हमने इतना काम करा लिया और इतना एम्प्लॉयमेंट जनरेशन कर लिया, इतना हमने पोर्ट्स का काम करा लिया, वहां एम्प्लॉयमेंट जनरेशन कर लिया. तो जैसे जैसे इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर डेवलपमेंट के प्रोजेक्ट ज्यादा होंगे, एम्प्लॉयमेंट जनरेशन होगा, और जब एम्प्लॉयमेंट जनरेशन होगा means people will be more money in their pockets, and then they will come to the market to buy the things of their need. This means the spending will increase. The whole emphasis of this budget is on spending. अगर एक शब्द कहें इस पूरे बजट में कि इस बजट में क्या है, गवर्नमेंट ने सारे मेजर्स किए हैं जिससे स्पेंडिंग इंक्रीज हो. तो इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर से एम्प्लॉयमेंट जनरेशन से स्पेंडिंग, और जब स्पेंडिंग होगी तो ऑब्वियसली द मैन्युफैक्चरिंग सेक्टर विल गेट अ बूस्ट. जब हम सामान खरीदेंगे, जेब में पैसा है, सामान खरीदने जाएंगे, तो जो सामान हम खरीदेंगे उनको बनाने वाली कंपनियां ज्यादा सामान बनाएंगी. तो गवर्नमेंट स्पेंडिंग के रूट से इकोनॉमी के रिवाइवल की कोशिश कर रही है. तो ये ऑन द फेस ऑफ इट ठीक है, एज ए पॉलिसी देयर इज नथिंग रॉन्ग इन दैट, बट देन द काइंड ऑफ अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट विच इज देयर. अभी मैं फिगर्स आज ही देख रहा था, अगर हम फिगर्स देखें, दिस सेंटर फॉर मॉनिटरिंग इंडियन इकोनॉमी, CMI की फिगर्स देखिए, जो लेटेस्ट जनवरी की फिगर्स हैं, तो उसमें फिगर्स में ये है कि अभी दिसंबर का जो डेटा आया है, दिसंबर 2020 का, अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट राइज है 9.1%। तो ये जो इतना बड़ा है, और जो ये डेटा है जो कंटिन्यूअसली अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट बढ़ा है पिछले 10-11 महीनों से जब से कोरोना आया है, तो क्या ये जो सरकार ने तरीका अपनाया है स्पेंडिंग का, क्या ये यहाँ पे काम आएगा, और क्या ये 9.1 का जो राइज है वो किसी तरह से कम होगा? आई हैव माई डाउट्स ऑन दिस। तो अब आप दोनों तरह की चीजें हैं, आप सप्लाई साइड से प्रॉब्लम को ठीक करने की कोशिश करेंगे कि डिमांड साइड से प्रॉब्लम को ठीक करने की कोशिश करेंगे, बट दीज आर द सीरियस प्रॉब्लम्स। द गवर्नमेंट हैज टू टेक, आई बिलीव, सम एडिशनल मेजर्स टू हैंडल द प्रॉब्लम ऑफ अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट। जो जिस तरह का जॉब लॉस हुआ है हम सबको पता है, ऑर्गेनाइज सेक्टर में भी हुआ है, अनऑर्गेनाइज सेक्टर में भी हुआ है। इस जॉब लॉस की प्रॉब्लम को कम्बैट करना, इससे निपटना आई थिंक काफी मुश्किल है। अगर बजट में जो कोशिश की है उससे अगर कुछ हो जाता है ठीक है, बट ये प्रॉब्लम आई डोंट बिलीव कि जिस लेवल का अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट है वो आसानी से जो प्रोविजन सरकार ने किए हैं उनसे ये सॉल्व होने वाला।
धन्यवाद सर। एक सवाल और है सूची पाठक का। शी इज आस्किंग कि डिड बजट 2021 ले अ वे फॉरवर्ड अगेंस्ट फिस्कल कंजर्वेटिज्म and did it deal with the pandemic situation in a better manner?
ये आई मीन दिस क्वेश्चन इज गुड, नो डाउट। ये जो फिस्कल कंजर्वेटिज्म तो ऑब्वियसली कम हुआ है, वो क्लेम सरकार का पूरा सही है। वो सरकार का कहना ये, एंड टू दैट आई एग्री, कि ये फिस्कल प्रूडेंस का बजट है या फिस्कल ट्रांसपेरेंसी का बजट है, वो बिल्कुल सही है। ट्रांसपेरेंसी, अच्छा, सरकार के सामने ट्रांसपेरेंसी मजबूरी भी थी, क्योंकि कोरोना में जो चीजें खराब हुई है आप ये कह नहीं सकते कि अच्छी हैं, तो गवर्नमेंट ने एक्सेप्ट कर लिया, और गवर्नमेंट उसको क्लेम भी कर रही है कि अगर 9.5 का फिस्कल डेफिसिट है तो है, तो वो सरकार ने मान लिया है। तो उस लेवल तक तो ठीक है, दैट वे तो गवर्नमेंट इज राइट ऑन दिस। कि और ऑब्वियसली 10 महीने में इकोनॉमी हिट हुई, ये तो हमें पता ही है। 2008 में भी इतनी खराब हालत नहीं थी जिस तरह का जब वर्ल्ड में रिसेशन आया और इंडिया में स्लो डाउन आया, इस बार निश्चित रूप से हालात खराब थे। तो उस हिसाब से जो फिस्कल प्रूडेंस की बात है वो बिल्कुल सही है, वो सरकार ने किया।
धन्यवाद सर। मैं डायरेक्टर सर से एक सवाल करना चाहता हूं सर। एक सवाल आया चैट बॉक्स में कि जो हेल्थ और एजुकेशन है उसको लेके काफी बात की जाती है और हमारा बेसिक भी है, तो आपको क्या लगता है हेल्थ और एजुकेशन में इस बार बजट में ऐसा क्या नया है जिसके कारण जो हमारी दिक्कतें हैं हेल्थ या एजुकेशन से रिलेटेड हम उसको टैकल कर पाएंगे?
That is true that in the present circumstances, increasing spending, देखिए, let us understand one thing. The best way to come out of a recessionary situation, as the macroeconomist Lord Keynes said, is to increase spending. जो अभी सर ने कहा, मंदी से बाहर आना है, खर्चा बढ़ाइए आप। एंड खर्चा कौन बढ़ा सकता है? आप और मैं नहीं बढ़ा सकते, गवर्नमेंट बढ़ा सकती है, राइट? So the best way to handle the present situation is by increasing spending, and the best sectors in which the government can increase spending is health, obviously, number one, and second is education. So that way, I must say that not much has been done in the present budget. कुछ ऐसा खास तो है नहीं जिससे हमको नजर आए कि हेल्थ पे, एजुकेशन पे कुछ विशेष हुआ है। So I don't think that way the budget has come up to our expectations.
In fact, मोहित, यहाँ पे मैं एक चीज ऐड करना चाहूंगा, जो लिक्विडिटी की बात है, क्योंकि सारा जो पेच है वो लिक्विडिटी में है, और जो सारा स्टॉक मार्केट है, जैसे प्रमोद भी बात कर रहे थे, स्टॉक मार्केट को समझाया, जो स्टॉक मार्केट का खेल है और जो सरकार गेम खेल रही है टू कंफ्यूज द पीपल, कि टू इन्फ्यूज लिक्विडिटी इन द मार्केट। जितना ज्यादा पैसा आएगा मार्केट में तो ऑब्वियसली वो कहीं ना कहीं तो पैसा जाएगा। अब वो पैसा जितना ज्यादा आ रहा है वो प्रोडक्टिव तरीके से तो इस्तेमाल हुआ नहीं। खास तौर से क्या हुआ कोरोना में, बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग है उसको समझने के लिए। कोरोना में क्या हुआ, सारी एक्टिविटीज ठप हो गई, तो जिन लोगों के पास पैसा था या है वो घर में बैठ गए। अब आप बाहर जा नहीं सकते, ट्रेवल कर नहीं रहे हैं, घूम रहे नहीं है, रेस्टोरेंट में जा नहीं रहे हैं, पैसा आपकी इनकम अफेक्टेड नहीं हुई। उन लोगों की जिनकी इनकम अफेक्टेड नहीं हुई, तो पैसा तो मेरे पास है, अब मैं खर्च करने के लिए मेरे पास एवेन्यूज ही नहीं है। तो मैंने सारा पैसा जितना सरप्लस मेरा था स्टॉक मार्केट में डाल दिया। तो सारा जो सरप्लस मनी था, जितनी लिक्विड था, वो सारा स्टॉक मार्केट में आ गया। और स्टॉक मार्केट शुरू में हिट हुआ, नोशनल भी था, इतनी बड़ी पेंडेमिक आई थी, लेकिन 3-4 महीने में संभल गया और उसके बाद से बढ़ने लगा। जून के बाद से बढ़ता चला गया, बढ़ता ही चला जा रहा है। ये पैसा सारा लिक्विड है, मनी है, जो सारा स्टॉक मार्केट में जा रहा है, लेकिन इससे हमारी इकोनॉमी की हेल्थ नहीं पता लग रही है। ये लोगों के लिए एक इन्वेस्टमेंट का जरिया है। और जरिया इन्वेस्टमेंट का क्यों हुआ ज्यादा? क्योंकि गोल्ड का प्राइस लगातार बढ़ा पिछले कई महीनों में।
जी।
तो अब गोल्ड में कोई इन्वेस्ट कर नहीं सकता। पैसा इन्वेस्ट करने के लिए रखा हुआ है मेरे पास, मैं खर्चा भी नहीं कर पा रहा हूं, तो मैंने क्या किया कि स्टॉक मार्केट में पैसा डाला, जिसकी वजह से स्टॉक मार्केट लगातार बढ़ा। तो पहला स्टॉक मार्केट को अगर आप समझे, एक रीजन। दूसरा रीजन ये है कि स्टॉक मार्केट में जितना भी राइज हुआ पिछले महीनों में, ये फॉरेन पोर्टफोलियो इन्वेस्टर्स हैं, जो जब पैसा आया उन्होंने डाला, निकाला और निकल गए। लेकिन ये जिस दिन पैसा निकलेगा एक साथ, उस दिन ये धड़ाम से 50,000 से 40 पे 35,000 पे आ जाएगा, जो मार्च में हुआ। तो ये बड़ा खतरनाक प्रोपोजिशन है। और दूसरा, अगर ये इसको आप इकोनॉमी का इंडिकेटर माने, तो आप ये देखिए कितने परसेंट लोग स्टॉक मार्केट में इन्वेस्ट करते हैं। जैसे मैंने इसी तरह का एक सवाल किया था, अगर हम लोगों की संख्या के, तो एक तो स्टॉक मार्केट कैन नेवर बी एन इंडिकेटर। ये सारा जो जगलरी है, ये एक तो लिक्विडिटी को हमें अच्छी तरह से समझना पड़ेगा। दूसरा, जो हमारा फॉरेन एक्सचेंज रिजर्व है,
जी।
ठीक है, फॉरेन एक्सचेंज रिजर्व को सरकार लगातार प्रोजेक्ट कर रही है कि
जी।
हमारे पास तो इतना रिजर्व है। ये रिजर्व आया कहां से? ये रिजर्व इसलिए आपके पास इकट्ठा हो गया क्योंकि आपका जो इंपोर्ट था वो कम हो गया। तो जब आपने पैसा खर्चा ही नहीं किया तो इकट्ठा हो गया आपके पास। आपका इंपोर्ट गोल्ड का भी कम हो गया, इंपोर्ट आपका 3 महीने 4 महीने तक क्रूड का बहुत कम हो गया। लॉकडाउन था, कोई घर से बाहर नहीं जा रहा था, पेट्रोल डीजल बिक नहीं रहा था, तो हमारा सारा पैसा जाता है वो या तो गोल्ड को इंपोर्ट करने में जाता है या क्रूड को इंपोर्ट करने में जाता है। वो पैसा हमारा सेव होता गया और हमारे पास फॉरेन एक्सचेंज बढ़िया अच्छा रिजर्वायर हो गया। एंड वी आर क्लेमिंग कि हमारे पास फॉरेन एक्सचेंज रिजर्व भी है, वी आर क्लेमिंग कि हमारा स्टॉक मार्केट भी बहुत तेजी से ऊपर जा रहा है, एंड द इकोनॉमी इज डूइंग वेल। ऑल दिस इज मिसलीडिंग। इकोनॉमी ऊपर जा रही है या नहीं जा रही है, मेरे जैसे आदमी के लिए, जो इकोनॉमिक्स का स्टूडेंट नहीं है, कॉमन आदमी के लिहाज से मेरे लिए इंडिकेटर ये है कि आपका अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट का लेवल क्या है। अगर आपका अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट का लेवल लो है, देन योर इकोनॉमी इज डूइंग वेल, और अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट ज्यादा है तो आपकी इकोनॉमी अच्छा नहीं कर रही है, सिंपल।
जी सर, एक आखिरी है अंजलि पाठक का, ये पूछ रही है कि सरकार के पास क्या ऐसे की रेवेन्यू के सोर्सेज होते हैं जिससे वो पैसा अर्न कर सकती है, और उसके बाद चाहे ये कोविड वैक्सीन हो, चाहे इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर हो, या एसेट मोनेटाइजेशन हो, वहां पे उसको यूज कर सकती है। तो क्या ऐसे सोर्सेज होते हैं मेजरली?
मेरे हिसाब से देखिए, डायरेक्ट और इनडायरेक्ट टैक्सेस ही है बेसिकली, तो इसी में सारा छुपा हुआ है, पैसा वहीं से आएगा। मेरा पर्सनली ये मानना है कि सरकार को पहली चीज तो डायरेक्ट टैक्सेस को खत्म कर देना चाहिए। आई मीन दिस इज माय थिंकिंग, पीपल may differ from this। और इनडायरेक्ट टैक्सेस से ही आपका सारा रेवेन्यू कलेक्शन करिए, क्योंकि गरीब से गरीब आदमी भी इनडायरेक्ट टैक्सेस के थ्रू सरकार को टैक्स देता है। ऐसा कोई भी व्यक्ति इस देश में नहीं होगा, गरीब से गरीब आदमी भी, जो सरकार को टैक्स ना देता हो। उसको लगता है वो टैक्स नहीं देता, लेकिन टैक्स तो वो देता ही है, ठीक है। जहां तक डायरेक्ट टैक्सेस का सवाल है, या तो उसको रैशनलाइज करिए। डायरेक्ट टैक्सेस को रैशनलाइज नहीं किया है, अभी भी 4 करोड़ से ज्यादा लोग हैं नहीं जो रिटर्न, इनकम टैक्स रिटर्न फाइल करते हैं, इंडिविजुअल टैक्स पेयर्स। उन 4-4.5 करोड़ में भी जो एक्चुअल टैक्स देते हैं, कोई कंसिडरेबल अमाउंट देते हैं, ऐसे लोगों की संख्या 1.5 करोड़ है। मैंने यही सवाल किया था चीफ इकोनॉमिक एडवाइजर से 2 दिन पहले। मैंने कहा कि पीपल वर एक्सपेक्टिंग कि आप इनकम टैक्स के स्लैब्स को वो करेंगे, लेकिन आपने नहीं किया। अगर आप करते तो लोगों का पैसा बचता और स्पेंडिंग बढ़ती। तो उनका जवाब था कि हम 1.5 करोड़ लोग टैक्स देते हैं, वो हमारे फोकस में नहीं है कि वो उनका पैसा बच जाए और वो स्पेंड करें। हमारे फोकस में 137 करोड़ लोग हैं। गवर्नमेंट खुद एडमिट करती है कि 1.5 करोड़ लोग पैसा देते हैं, जिससे पूरा देश चलता है। आप इस 1.5 करोड़ जो इंडिविजुअल टैक्स पेयर्स हैं, इसको आप बढ़ाते क्यों नहीं है?
जी,
इसमें लोगों की गलती नहीं, आप टैक्स लेते ही नहीं तो लोग टैक्स देते नहीं। लेकिन इनका कहना क्या है, सरकार का, उस दिन भी कहा था, पहले भी सरकार की जो पॉलिसी है, सरकार का कहना है कि हम इस जो एक्सपेंड करने की बजाय हम कंप्लाइंस पे ज्यादा जोर है हमारा।
जी,
मतलब जो भी उस रेंज में आता है इनकम के, वो टैक्स दे। ये बात सही है, कुछ हद तक सही है। पहले लोग टैक्स बचा लेते थे, अब सरकार, अब जो ये सरकार के आने के बाद ये एक अच्छी बात हुई है कि इनकम टैक्स डिपार्टमेंट का एकदम ओवरऑल हो गया, इतना एफिशिएंट हो गया है। आई एडमिट, मेरे पास पर्सनल एक्सपीरियंसेस है, इतना एफिशिएंट हो गया है कि वो सबसे टैक्स वसूल लेते हैं।
जी,
अच्छा, केवल कोर्जन ही नहीं है, परसुएशन से वसूलते हैं। तो वो बात सही है, परसुएशन से टैक्स ले लेते हैं, अच्छी बात है। टैक्स कोई बचा नहीं पाता, ये भी अच्छी बात है। रिफंड बहुत स्मूथ कर देते हैं, वो भी अच्छी बात है। इस बार मैंने टैक्स जमा किया, मेरे पास रिफंड 4 दिन में आ गया, तो ये एस्टॉनिशिंग है। ये एफिशिएंसी इंप्रूवमेंट आई एडमिट की हुआ है, लेकिन मेरा ये मानना है कि इनकम टैक्स का जो रेंज है वो बढ़ा के और कैटेगरीज के लोगों को भी इंक्लूड करना चाहिए। सिर्फ सर्विस क्लास फंस जाता है इसमें। तो और अगर आप ऐसा नहीं कर सकते, सरकार को लगता है ये नहीं हो सकता, प्रैग्मेटिक नहीं है, तो आप 1.5 करोड़ लोगों को ही क्यों दंड दे रहे हैं? आप इनकम जो इनडायरेक्ट टैक्सेस हैं उनको राइज कर दीजिए और वहां से ही सारा रेवेन्यू कलेक्शन कर लीजिए।
जी, इसी बात पे मुझे एक स्टेटमेंट याद आ रहा है। 2016 में जब वित्त मंत्री थे, उन्होंने यही स्टेटमेंट दिया था। उनसे सवाल किया गया था कि जो मिडिल क्लास है उसके लिए क्या है, तो उनका बड़ा ही मैं कहूंगा अजीब सा जवाब था। उन्होंने कहा मिडिल क्लास को अपना ध्यान खुद रखना होगा। सो आई थिंक ये एक बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट मैटर है सर। और इस बार भी जो बजट में एक और इंटरेस्टिंग प्रपोजल टैक्सेस से रिलेटेड है कि अगर जो पहले 6 साल से पुराना रिकॉर्ड अगर आपका इनकम टैक्स का है, उसको सरकार देख सकती थी, इनकम टैक्स डिपार्टमेंट उसको निकाल के देख सकता था। उसको रिड्यूस जरूर किया गया है 3 साल के लिए, लेकिन अगर आपका टैक्स का जो लाइबिलिटी बनता है वो 50 लाख है या उससे ज्यादा है, तो 10 साल पुराना केस भी खोला जा सकता है। तो ये जो आप बात कर रहे हैं कंप्लायंस की, कहीं ना कहीं सरकार ने एक तरफ कम किया और दूसरी तरफ बढ़ा के उसको बिल्कुल बैलेंस कर दिया है। तो मेरे ख्याल से अगर इस तरह से हम चलते रहे तो ये कॉन्वर्सेशन कभी खत्म होगी नहीं। So that's why, without much delay, I would like to thank Professor Dr. Ravikant Swamy, Director, Delhi Metropolitan Education, for joining in the session and sharing his views on this budget. I would also like to thank Professor Susmita Bala, the head of Department of DME Media School, and Professor Dr. Ambrish Saxena for sharing his views on this budget and making it better for the students to understand. Other than that, I would also like to thank Mr. Pramod Kumar Pandey, because he actually helped the students in understanding the basic concepts of the share market. And other than that, Mr. Ritik Ghosh, Mr. Sumantra Sarthidas, and other faculty members of DME Media School for making this program a grand success. And on top of that, all the students for patiently listening and posing questions. Thank you very much. And do join again for our Day 2 program of Decoding the Union Budget 2021. We'll be coming back tomorrow at 2:30 p.m. with Dr. Sharat Kohli. Thank you very much.